Joining me today is Michael Evans, a former defence editor of The Times. Michael, many years as a defence editor and at the Pentagon. Can you think of any breaches as serious as this one?
I've been racking my brain to recall any similar sort of instance. I mean, there have been lots of pretty wild leaks over the years, but no, I don't think so. I think this is an exceptional incident which will put the frighteners on the Trump administration and get various procedures changed pretty rapidly.
The men involve Steve Witkoff, J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth. How does it reflect on them? They're not career security professionals. Does it suggest they're naive or inexperienced or something worse?
I think the first thing that probably should be said, well, there are two things. First of all, they all knew they were using the Signal app. In other words, it's an encrypted, perfectly well encrypted system. For you and I to chat on it would be fine and nobody else would be listening. But for them to use Signal for this sort of conversation, or for any conversation that involves national security, is obviously not permitted in Washington. They have to use a very special system. I always forget what it's called, but it's something like sensitive compartmented information facility. That's the one. And that's purely encrypted and secure. And the second thing is that obviously nobody was aware, even Michael Waltz, who actually the national security advisor who invited Jeffrey Goldberg from Atlantic to take part in this, even he, I suspect, didn't realize that the JG, that was the initials listed in this long list of 18 names, was this journalist. So whatever Pete Hegseth said and J.D. Vance said and the others said was said in ignorance, if you like, of the fact that there was a journalist listening in. So I think that's to be sort of fair, if you like. Clearly, if they'd known a journalist was there, they wouldn't have said what they'd said. So I think that's the only thing to say. But obviously, they broke all the rules by using the Signal app. And what I don't understand is that one of the names on that list, or one assumes is the right, judging by the initials, is Susie Wiles, who is the very competent Trump White House Chief of Staff, who you would have thought would have checked, or somebody on her staff would have checked all the initials to make sure that they were all legitimate. But dear old JG was appearing on all these discussions, and nobody asked, hang up, who is JG?
Is it that it's just inconvenient to use the secure server, the SCIF? Do you think?
No, I mean, sorry, but when you're a senior official in the White House or in the Trump administration, you know what the rules are. The rules are you do business, and business means your particular department's business. You do it on the secure government net. The UK government, all other European governments, they all do the same. They all have this secure net. What you don't do is have a Zoom call, for instance, or a Signal app, or whatever you like to use. They wouldn't talk on this one that we're talking on. The system is actually pretty good, as I said, and is encrypted so that theoretically nobody can listen in. But two things. First of all, if you were a foreign power and an adversary to America, and you were able, for some reason, to be able to hack into these systems, then obviously that's a danger. They can't hack in, presumably, to the government system that we've just been talking about, the sensitive compartmented information facility. So, no, they've just broke the rules, and someone is going to answer for it, I suspect.
Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic is pretty much the definition of a Washington insider. He waited to publish the details of this leak. He excised some of the crucial details. So it's embarrassing, but no harm was done. What is the worst that could have happened?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he played it by the book. Actually, he was obviously tempted to write a story on it, and I guess who wouldn't be? But where he thought he might breach some sort of national security things, he didn't do it. So I think he played it pretty well. And it's always easy to say yes, but if someone was listening in who would have had damaging thoughts about America and would have tipped off the Houthis, that's all a bit that's nonsense, really, because clearly a journalist of his standing, or any journalist, I think, is not going to sort of ring the Houthis and say you're about to be bombed. So I think that's nonsense. The damage really is people on the outside, all of us, in other words, looking on the inside, assuming that the administration is super smart and super efficient and super secure and super aware of what their job is. And they suddenly find that there are a group of very, very senior, in fact, the top officials, not only chatting on a sort of insecure app, if you like, but at least not a government one, and then, of course, letting free rein on their opinions, which that is the most damaging thing. Is the opinions they came up with. The fact that they used a certain type of bomb on a certain time and certain targets obviously is potentially damaging. But the fact is, the bombings took place before the article appeared, so I think there wasn't any damage in that. And whether the operation was successful or not, we don't know, although Trump and others have said it was highly successful. So the damage is looking from the outside to the inside and seeing how this administration is functioning. And it's not a pretty sight, I have to say.
For me, the exchange that stood out were the comments on Europe. We've heard the Trump administration talking tough about Europe again and again in public. But does this perhaps show that it's not just a saber-rattling, a saber-rattling kind of belief that they are in public to get Europe to act a certain way? This is a genuinely held belief about Europe.
I fear it is. As you say, we've had a lot of insight into this before. Hegseth has been quite open about his views that Europe should do more. Trump has definitely said that, as he did in his first term in office. So I think that's not the sort of secret, if you like. But I think it's the language used is highly unfortunate, to put it at its lowest. I loathe the Europeans, the way they sort of play piggyback and they're not doing their own thing. Okay, so if you're in Washington and looking at Europe, this is a commonly held view that Europe just doesn't do enough. And they look at the amount of money spent on defence and they say, well, this is ridiculous. We are, okay, the superpower and we're the leader of the NATO alliance, but it really is time. I mean, this is an old message that has been spelled out by many administrations, but with this particular one and with the particular people who are in charge of some of the departments, Pete Hegseth being one of them, they do seem to have a very sort of personal feeling about Europe and that they're not playing ball. They seem to ignore the fact, by the way, that they are assuming that Pete Hegseth's sort of argument was why are we bothering, and Vance's argument was why are we bothering to do this now when not much commercial traffic from America goes through the Red Sea. It's mostly Europe, so let them do it. But this is the fact of life, is that we have an alliance here, and the alliance is led by America, and you can't get away from the fact that America is the only one that has all these aircraft carriers and a huge military superpower, and therefore we always need them, and that's a fact of life. But the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force have been involved. The French Air Force and Navy have been involved in the Red Sea for months and months, and they've been attacking Houthi targets and shooting down drones, etc. So it's not like Europe has been sitting back and letting America do all the hard work on the Houthi threat to commercial traffic going through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea.
A big part of the alliance, a big part of the relationship is intelligence sharing. How much will Allied intelligence services be looking at today? How much data they share and what they share?
I mean, it would be absolutely fatal if the unique intelligence sharing system was in any way undermined or reduced, because frankly it's the club, the so-called Five Eyes Club, which Britain obviously is a part of. They all play a crucial role in sharing intelligence. It's not just America. America obviously, if you like, is the main provider because they have such a huge satellite network, which of course we don't have. but the actual analysis and sharing is key to the whole alliance and the whole defense security setup. So it would be highly damaging if someone in London or in Paris, not Paris, because France aren't part of it, London and Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the other ones who are part of this Five Eyes Club, if they were to say we shall draw back from now on and reduce. In fact, in the case of, certainly in the case of this country, it wouldn't even be possible to do that because the intelligence services are so closely interlinked that it just wouldn't be possible, I think, to reduce the impact of the Five Eyes Club. And I think the intelligence services people themselves, all highly professional, have very, very good close links with their counterparts in America. And I just don't see that being affected. But if politically, governments might say, are we sure that we want to continue providing America with all the secrets that we have? Politically, that is just a possibility. But basically, the intelligence sharing will carry on because it has to carry on because that's the way the system works most effectively.
How surprised were you by J.D. Vance, the Vice President, being so involved in these conversations? And particularly that, unlike in public, he seems to perhaps disagree with Trump's positions.
Yeah, it's an interesting little nuance, I thought, in the conversation where he was suggesting that it was too early, maybe you should wait a month before the attacks go happen. And what he was trying to say was that the message coming out of the Trump administration has been non-stop, Europe must do more, Europe must do more, Europe must take over whatever it is happens in peacekeeping in Ukraine, it's got to be Europe. So the message is Europe, Europe, Europe. And here is Trump saying, I think we should start bombing the Houthis because they're still attacking commercial traffic. And by the way, most of the commercial trafficking is European. So I think that's the message that Vance was sort of putting across, was that I don't really quite see that this is not the message that we're trying to put out. So let's wait for a month and see what happens. And then I rather liked the comment where he said, well, I'll keep my thoughts to myself and I will go along with the team if they think the bombing is a good idea. I'll go along with it, but I'll keep my thoughts to myself. Poor J.D. Vance. The whole world now knows what his personal thoughts are.
As well as the whole world, many enemies of the United States, the Houthis, China, maybe Russia. What conclusions will they be drawing today? Will it change their approach moving forward?
Well, I think they know how the Trump administration works. They had 4 years of the Trump administration before. They've now had 8 months or whatever it is. I don't think they will be as surprised as you and I are about the way a journalist was involved in this, and they will have read every single word of the transcript with great enthusiasm. But I don't think it's going to suddenly make Putin or Xi Jinping in Beijing suddenly sit up and think, oh my goodness, now we've got a new sort of leverage against the Trump administration. No, I mean, I think all governments have the problem of leaks. This, of course, isn't a leak. This is something different. But there are leaks, and always been leaks coming out of the White House over the decades. So I don't think it's going to change, the sort of geostrategic thinking in either Moscow or Beijing.